In this video, I'll show you 3 ways to avoid the mark of the beast from the scriptures. The mark of the beast is something that's spoken about a lot in Christianity, often with a lot of fear and warning. And I guess to an extent, rightly so. The passage that we find the mark of the beast spoken about is in Revelation. And it is somewhat a passage of warning. But the thing about the book of Revelation is that a lot of the writings, including the writings about the mark of the beast, are apocalyptic. And apocalyptic writings are full of imagery, often seemingly strange imagery, that depicts either something of God's deliverance for his people, God's judgment towards those who persecute his people and rebel against him, and God's ultimate victory over evil. And so whenever we read things that seem strange or scary in the book of Revelation, for those of us who know Jesus, it shouldn't be scary. It should be something that reminds us of God's victory on our behalf, of God's certain and guaranteed deliverance for us. So let's take a look at the passage that we get the mark of the beast from. Let's look at Revelation 13, verse 15. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. Now, it's really important when we try to interpret any passage that we don't try to understand it without the context that it's written in and understanding the people that it's written to, because it cannot mean to us what it did not mean to them. The Bible is written for us, but it's not written to us. It's written to a specific groups of people at specific points in time. So it's really important that we understand how they would have understood the text, so that we can then apply it to our lives today. These words are written to Christians in the early church who were being severely persecuted by the Roman Empire. And so they're not supposed to be words about things that are going to happen 2,000 years after that. They're not supposed to be words about the vaccine or words about Bill Gates. They're supposed to be words to comfort those people who are suffering and to help them understand the times that they were in at the time it was written. If you read the whole of Revelation 13, you'll see that there's a dragon who gives life to what is called the first beast, and then the second beast comes up, and the second beast is the one who the mark of the beast is attached to. And the way that the early church would have understood this is the dragon is Satan, which we know from chapter 12 if you read that. And then the first beast they would have seen as the Roman Empire, the political side of the Roman Empire, particularly the emperor himself. They would have understood to be that's who the first beast represents. And then you get this second beast who points to the first beast, who causes people to worship the first beast, to follow the first beast, to follow the Roman emperor. And so they're looking to that as, okay, this is the Roman military that is enforcing the rule of the Roman Empire, that's forcing us to serve the Roman Empire, that's forcing us to renounce Jesus so that we can say that Caesar is God. So that's who they would have understood the second beast to be. The mark whether it's physical or not is not really relevant. It's what the mark represents, which is allegiance to the Roman Empire over allegiance to Jesus. And even the number 666, like numbers are always symbolic in the book of Revelation. 3 and 7 are perfect numbers. And 6 is just a number that's not 7. So 3 sixes is just like 3 completely or perfectly, and then 6 not perfect, like completely imperfect, completely not perfect. That's all that 666 symbolizes and represents. But it's still something that we want to avoid, right? We want to avoid our allegiance being to our equivalent of the Roman Empire. We want to avoid our allegiance being to something that's trying to draw our allegiance away from Jesus. And so how do we do that? How do we avoid the mark of the beast? If you read chapter 13 and verse 1, it says, "The dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. The dragon gave the beast his power and his throne and great authority." So it's both of the beasts get their power from the dragon. But if we go to chapter 12, it says, "They triumph over him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony." And so followers of Jesus overcome the dragon who gives power to the beast through what Jesus did on the cross and through our testimony of faith that we trust in Jesus and his work on the cross. And so that's the first way to avoid the mark of the beast: by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony. If we have put our trust in Jesus and his work on the cross, and we have a testimony of faith that he has saved us, delivered us, and rescued us, that he's the Lord of our lives, then the mark of the beast is nothing that we have to fear. It also says this in verse 8 of chapter 13. "All the inhabitants of the earth will worship the beast, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's book of life, the Lamb who was slain from the creation of the world." And so here we're told that actually all of the inhabitants of the earth give their allegiance to some kind of beast, some kind of thing that is drawing their allegiance away from Jesus, except for those whose names have been written in the Lamb's book of life. And again, the only way for our names to be written in the Lamb's book of life so that we can avoid the mark of the beast is through what Jesus did on the cross. Like if we trust in Jesus, if we turn from our sin and put our faith in him, the mark of the beast isn't something that we need to fear, because our names are written in the Lamb's book of life. And so we won't be drawn away by the first or the second beast or any other beast or any other thing that draws our allegiance away from Jesus. And then lastly, the last way I want to point out from the text that we can avoid the mark of the beast is, I guess, first of all, looking at the placement of the mark. In verse 16, we're told that the beast forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads. But then in chapter 14 and verse 1, "I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads." So this group of 144,000, they have the name of the Lamb and the Father written on their foreheads, which means they cannot have the mark of the beast written there. But how do you become one of the 144,000 that have the name of the Lamb and the Father on their foreheads? Well, to understand that First of all, I want to remind you that numbers in the book of Revelation are symbolic. And so this number of 144,000 is not a literal number of capacity of the number of people who can have the name of the Lamb and the Father on their forehead. But if we want to be part of this symbolic number of 144,000, if you want to know how to do that, we need to go back to Revelation 7. And in Revelation 7, we're first introduced to the 144,000. And it's really important to pay attention in the book of Revelation to what the difference between what John hears and what he sees. Because what he hears is sometimes different to what he sees, but they both come together to give us the full picture of what's happening here. So in verse 4, we're told, "Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel." And then from verses 5 to 8, it just lists the different tribes and says that 12,000 people were sealed. That's what he heard. And then in verse 9, so he hears 144,000 people are sealed from the tribes of Israel. In verse 9, he sees something. It says, "After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and before the Lamb. They were wearing white robes and holding palm branches in their hands." So the 144,000 was a number that he heard from the tribes of Israel. But what he sees is a number that he can't count from every nation, tribe, and language. Meaning that where the people of Israel in what he hears is symbolic of God's people, and that where the nation of Israel was the nation that God had set apart, now the nation that God has set apart, the holy nation, is made of people from every nation. They are the 144,000. So how do we become part of this? How do we become part of this 144,000, which is actually a multitude from every nation? Verse 13 of chapter 7. "Then one of the elders asked me, 'These in white robes, who are they, and where did they come from?' I answered, 'Sir, you know.' And he said, 'These are they who have come out of the great tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb.'" So to become part of the 144,000, which is actually a great multitude from every nation that no one can count, to become part of that group that has the name of the Lamb and the Father on their forehead, and so they cannot have the mark of the beast, to be part of that group, you have to wash your robes in the blood of the Lamb. In other words, to trust in the work that Jesus did on the cross. Repent of your sin and put your faith in Jesus. Now, what you'll notice is that all the three ways that I gave you to avoid the mark of the beast was actually different ways of saying the same thing. Put your faith in Jesus, and you don't have to worry about the mark of the beast. Give him your full allegiance. Turn away from your sin. Put your faith in him, and the mark of the beast is not even something you need to think about. So I hope that was helpful. Turn to Jesus today. Feel free to like and subscribe for more.